with a cheerful smile like she always did. On a side note, I'd like to say, sometimes this guy writes Applejack, he makes the J a capital letter, which kind of bothers me. Don't ask why. It just kind of bothers me because it should just be Applejack with only the A being capital. But that's just a minor thing that just bothers me. Don't know why I have to say it. Just did. Anyway. Applejack shed a tear before walking into the wooden barn. She slowly walked up into the apple wagon, pulling out the heavy contraption to the left. Just then there was a click. I thought that said dick for a second. It was barely audible, but the sound echoed throughout the empty barn. Applejack's head darted towards the source of the noise to see that the barn door had been closed. She turned to face the large door and started to walk slowly towards it. Who was it? She thought. Could it be? No. She shook her head, thinking she was overreacting. Hello? Hello? Who's the She was cut off by a sudden flare of Pegasus wings coming from the roof. Jeez. Okay, joke's over. Come on, this isn't funny. Then she heard a giggle. Yeah, that's how all murders start out. Awesome. The sinister laugh sent a shiver down Applejack's spine, but she stayed composed, despite the overwhelming fear that she had started to take over her body. Her mind kept trying to promote the possibility that it could be a cold-blooded killer coming back to finish the job. Is it you, Apple Bloom? Scootaloo? Her voice started to tremble. She couldn't put a brave face on anymore. Applejack then heard a loud, metallic bang coming from within the shadows. The sudden boom startled the earth pony. She lost her footing and tripped, landing on the ground, knocking the wind out of her. She gasped for air as she looked up, and then she saw a dark, shadowed figure. One rose eye glowing through the darkness, staring at her. Applejack froze, holding her breath. Who are you? Applejack whimpered. It didn't respond. It kept laughing, giggling at her. Applejack was terrified, but she frowned and jumped onto her feet, stomping her hoof. Okay, another side note, this is one thing that's just kind of messing, like, it's a kind of just question, it's just a question I have in my mind. If it is Rainbow Dash, and it is, if she was giggling and laughing, wouldn't Applejack be able to notice the laughing and giggling? But she still, right here, says, "Who the hey are ya? Tell me." But that just, she still asks, and you could probably tell it was Rainbow Dash. But I can see why, because she probably just can't believe it. But that's just a question that's going through my mind. If you want to explain that to me, you can. The laughing ceased. The dark figure started to walk towards her. Applejack backed up against the wall, fear showing strong in her eyes. The shadowed figure then walked past a window, the light shining through and revealing her true identity. Applejack could only gasp as she realized who the mysterious figure was. It was Rainbow Dash. Her mane was ruined. Her body was covered head to hoof in cuts and bruises, and her eyes were completely bloodshot. Rainbow! Oh, my Celestia, what happened to you, Rainbow? Rainbow snarled, the menacing growl making Applejack's heart skip a beat. Applejack began to back up against the wall, her legs trembling with fear. Are you okay? Rainbow Dash didn't answer. She just giggled as she made her way towards the terrified earth pony. She pulled out a long blade which had been hidden beneath her wing. It was bloody and twisted, but still gleamed with a menacing sharp edge. Applejack instantly panicked and sprinted for the door. As she reached for the handle, Rainbow Dash threw the knife, jamming the lock of the barn door, barely missing Applejack's muzzle. Applejack froze. as she could not help but stare at the long, gory knife in front of her. Applejack turned only to see the Pegasus pony had disappeared. Tense moments passed. Adrenaline was surging through her veins. Applejack heard a whisper coming from the roof and looked up to see the blue Pegasus flying towards her. Applejack had no time to react as she was tackled to the ground by the cyan blur. The Pegasus knelt on both Applejack's shoulders, holding her down. Applejack tried to buck the grinning Pegasus off her chest, but Rainbow Dash grabbed the petrified pony by the neck. Applejack joked, gurgling and flailed her arms and legs widely. The Pegasus began to sing with a gentle yet content voice, grasping her neck tighter and tighter. Hush now, quiet. Now, it's time to lay your sleepy head. Hush now, quiet now. It's time to go to bed. Applejack was growing faint. She stared into the crazed pony's bloodshot eyes, beating desperately on her arms to try to loosen that deadly grip. But no matter what she did, the grip just got stronger. Just then, Applejack noticed a large wooden splinter from the corner of her eye, just in reach of her right hoof. Okay, one thing I do want to say is I like how it's just like they do the hush now, quiet now thing. Now that actually makes it more twisted. That just makes it more twisted, but it also makes it make sense too. Like the way they put it makes sense, and I think the way they used it is pretty good. So I give you a clap on using that. So anyway, her face turning purple, Applejack grabbed the piece of timber, winced at the thought of what she was about to do to her friend. Applejack had no choice. She closed her eyes before forcing the splinter into Rainbow Dash's left leg. Rainbow Dash screamed in pain before Applejack bucked her off her shoulders. Applejack gasped for air, desperately trying to get back on her hooves. She turned to see Rainbow Dash wincing in pain, a large pool of blood forming around her. She slowly pulled a large splinter out of her leg. Rainbow Dash laughed, despite the immense pain now forming in her leg, and gave Rainbow Dash a look what made her sick to her stomach. What on earth has happened to you, Rainbow? What's wrong with you? Applejack yelled, rubbing the sore rash on her neck. Giggle at the ghostlies. Rainbow Dash then stood up, staring at Applejack, crouching down, ready to pounce. Don't even think about it, Applejack growled, but the insane pony remained unfazed. Rainbow Dash snarled again before sprinting towards her prey. I have to seriously speak louder. I hate you, dogs. You stupid dogs. Applejack was trapped, with only one option left. I'll be back. Okay, guys, I'm back. Rainbow Dash snarled again before sprinting towards her prey. Applejack was trapped with only one option. Option left. With nowhere else to go, Applejack charged towards the crazed pony, sweat dripping off her forehead. As Rainbow Dash jumped, Applejack dropped to slide on her stomach, using her back legs to buck the crazed mare into the cellar behind her. Silence finally struck the barn, giving Applejack the opportunity to catch her breath. Applejack was petrified. She couldn't leave the barn. Her main exit was blocked by the broken lock on the door, caused by the sharp throw of the knife, jamming it shut. Her second exit was through the dark, cold cellar, but there was no doubt that the crazed Pegasus would still be down there, waiting for her to make a move. Her house was half a mile away, but that didn't stop her from screaming. She screamed as much as she possibly could. Screamed for the death of her friend. Screamed for the corruption of another. Screamed that Big Macintosh, some pony, would hear her. How could she do this? Did she kill Pinkie Pie? Would you want to kill? Why would you want to kill her? Why would you want to kill me? All sorts of thoughts whirled around her mind, shrouded in a cloud of confusion, but she knew that there was only one way to save her friend. Big Macintosh could be awake, but he never goes near the barn once apple bucking season starts. He'd be too busy working. There's a chance he'd check the barn if he thought Applejack was missing, but he didn't know if Big Macintosh would find her dead or alive by then. It was useless. She could keep hoping for the best. Now was the time to act if she was able to survive. She grabbed a pitchfork which was propped against the wall, unsure if she would will herself to use it against her friend. She took a deep breath before she poked her head into the dark cellar. She couldn't see anything. The dark walls seemed to dance in the shadows, closing in on her. This made her even more worried that she was being led into a trap. But just in the distance, she saw a light coming from the cellar door. She turned the light on to see the long trail of blood on the floor. The trail seemed to head towards the door, before it disappeared in the darkness. She tiptoed downstairs, not knowing if she was alone or not. Still disoriented from savage attack earlier on, she found it hard to focus on her path. She headed towards the exit, her eyes constantly switching from between the blood trail and the door in front of her. She couldn't take it anymore. Applejack closed her eyes and bolted for the exit. Her mind tried everything to memorize her path. She didn't want to open her eyes to see the evil Pegasus staring back at her. Those eyes, that laugh, and that horrendous smile. In no time, she was halfway up the stairs. She felt relieved to feel the fresh air brushing against her fur, drying her sweat-soaked mane, but then... twang! She choked as she felt a rope wrap around her neck. The shock impact of the force causing her to drop her pitchfork. Applejack was stuck, hanging in the air, desperately trying to wriggle herself free. But the rope was fastened too tightly. Just then, in the blink of an eye, she saw Rainbow Dash swing the doors of the cellar. The Pegasus kicked her in the chest, causing the pony rope to snap. The force threw Applejack back into the cold cellar, where she hit the ground with a loud thud. Her heart sank as she saw her only escape close before her. She began to cry hysterically before she heard a soul-shattering scream coming from behind her. She turned around to see Rainbow Dash in mid-flight, wielding a pitchfork in her hooves. Applejack rolled to her left, barely missing the sharp instrument, as the Pegasus flew over her. As Applejack jumped onto her feet, Rainbow Dash threw the heavy tool towards her, but once again Applejack was quick enough to dodge this weapon, causing it to stick into the wall behind her, using what breath she had left to scream to the Pegasus, "Rainbow Dash! Rainbow, stop!" She didn't stop. Instead, she slowly circled Applejack, watching her every step. Just as Applejack was able to finally get her breath back, the crazed mare lunged for her. Applejack locked hooves with Rainbow Dash, trying to desperately push her away. Despite Applejack being a prized rodeo pony, she couldn't possibly match the crazed Pegasus' strength. Applejack used all of her might, her muscles burning under the strain, yet it wasn't enough. Rainbow Dash was snapping at her jaws, drool pouring from her mouth like a rabid dog. The horrific sight would be something that the poor earth pony would never forget. Applejack used the last of her strength to lean back and, once again, throw Rainbow Dash over her. She wasted no time in running for the exit. Her legs were on the verge of collapse as she threw herself towards freedom. But fate had decided to be cruel on her that day, as just seconds from freedom, she was bucked by the Pegasus. Oh, wait a minute. Never mind. Wait. Oh, I thought I was reading the same thing. Okay. But fate had decided to be cruel on her that, as seconds of freedom, she bucked by the Pegasus. The force threw the earth point to the left across the cellar, past her tools into the dull handle of the pitchfork sticking out of the wall. A pain crunch resounded across the room as the blunt instrument tore through her flesh, muscles, and her bones. Applejack couldn't breathe, and there was a warm, flooding feeling spreading through her chest. She looked down to see a blunt handle of a pitchfork sticking out of her chest, completely covered in blood. She was pinned against the wall, she couldn't move, and she could feel her blood pouring out of her wound. onto her hooves, and finally onto the floor. She began to cry in pain. She looked in front of her to see Rainbow Dash